instead of millennial, but instead of an actual picture of Tenebris, you should have just put a picture of a random Bith playing an instrument in the cantina.
Crazy how much power this one Darksider wielded.
Did Tenebris survive?
I think we'll be having a conversation similar to that at one point today.
Yeah, because Tenebris does show up in this one.
Mm-hmm. Crazy that he was a musician before being a Sith Lord.
Well, you got to make money somehow, right?
Mm-hmm. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to give you guys just a second to get in. We are recording an episode. Many of you guys, I see lots of familiar faces today. We're recording an episode of Tapcaf Transmissions, which is our Star Wars Expanded Universe podcast. You can find a link to it down in the description. Yeah. So we're going to record that. That means that we don't do... we don't read your comments until the very end. If you
we read them and then we silently judge them.
Yes.
We don't respond to them.
Yeah. And if you guys donate, like, I would just recommend don't donate, to be honest, because I can't call it out during the stream. I'll usually try to get it in the chat or whatever, but yeah. You good to go, Corey?
I am good to go, Corey.
Good to go, Corey. All right.
I'm always good to go, Corey. I'm already Corey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tapcaf Transmissions. My name is Justin, joined as always by my very special co-host, Corey Loses, from Corey Loses and Corey's Datapad. And today we will be discussing Book 3 of the Darth Bane trilogy, Dynasty of Evil, or I think I heard Corey calling it Dynasty of Evil.
I'm going to alternate between both so that everyone will get mad at me in the comments. That's just
such a fence
what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are fence sitters. That's we're both the only Star Wars podcasts, and like we elevate ourselves above other Star Wars podcasts by sitting on that fence. That's what brings us like 5 or 6 feet above the other ones that don't exist, because we're the only one.
Speaking of Star Wars podcasts, I had the little podcast gremlins reach out to me in a fever dream last night, and they said that I should remind you guys, if you're listening on an audio platform like iTunes or I guess the Apple Podcast Store, make sure you guys rate this podcast 5 stars and leave the best, most epic review you can, and maybe I will read one at the end of next stream if someone's read a good one. Because right now,
why don't we read the bad one at the end of this stream?
Yes, we will read the one current. We've gotten lots of reviews. I think we've gotten like 60 or 70
so I don't,
reviews.
Yeah, because we were talking about podcast stuff off stream. We actually, we're friends outside of the podcast, which is going to be a surprise to some listeners. Okay, we pretend we're friends on the podcast. We have to, okay. But, so we were talking about stuff like being more reliable with how we post the episodes and how we schedule the episodes. And we were going through different podcast distributors, wholesalers of podcasts, if you will, and looking at like reviews and everything. And there's the one site that has a bunch of reviews it's claiming are from iTunes. But if you go on the actual iTunes or Apple Podcast store, it says there's just one, and it's the one we're going to read at the end of the episode.
We'll read it at the end of the episode. It's pretty epic. Also, we were talking about a few other things. One is, you mentioned that there's a few other podcast platforms we can try to get onto.
Yeah, some I think we're
Amazon.
already technically on, but Podbean had the option to add it to these other ones that it says we're not on. So I think there's some other ones we're going to be trying to get onto. Basically, if there's one that you're aware of that you've tried to find us on that we're not on, let us know. And as long as it's free or reasonable, we will try to get on it. Yeah.
We're on most of the big ones right now, but there's still a couple more niche ones that we might try to get on. Other than that, what else did we talk about?
We did decide next week is we're going to be starting the Callista trilogy.
Yeah.
So Children of the Jedi is next.
We also talked maybe about redoing some of our titles, which might not interest you guys too much, but I looked at my personal source of strength and inspiration, the Oprah Book Club.
I thought you looked at the podcast gremlins that came to you in a dream.
Well, the podcast gremlins in a fever dream.
Sorry.
In a fever dream, the podcast gremlins presented the Oprah Book Club before me, as they do many nights. So I looked at that, and I looked at some other
I didn't know the Mennonites were that interested in podcasts.
Mennonites. Okay, you should. That's cursed knowledge that you're discussing pretty openly there, Corey. But so yeah, we're YouTubers, kind of learning how to do a podcast. But I think we both really enjoy doing it. It takes up a lot of our time compared to like what
Any
portion
individual
of our
video.
actual, yeah, and what portion of like an actual job this is compared to like everything else we do. This takes a lot of time. So if we're gonna do it, we might as well do it right. So I was also saying that I would probably like to maybe get some graphics, like a proper logo for the podcast, maybe a jingle at the beginning. So if you guys don't send me a little intro song, don't send me work that you guys have done specifically for the podcast, but if you guys do that sort of stuff, if you make logos or if you make music, feel free to email us at Tapcaf Transmissions. No guarantees will go with you, but also don't do us free work, because don't want to take advantage of you fine people. It's not epic.
If you want to go to Galaxy's Edge but can't afford admission, instead you can listen to a Tapcaf transmission. There you go.
Did you just make that up on the spot?
I was thinking about it for a solid 15 seconds before I said it.
Where'd you find this?
Okay. Apparently now we've got a soundboard. Are we a low budget AM or FM radio show?
That actually wasn't a soundboard. That was me changing my voice and doing that.
Okay.
I can also do a robot if you want. Like this. I've been having lots of fun with it.
It was different enough that you did sound like a sound effect from like TIE Fighter or something. I don't do people think you use a voice changer? Because I've gotten some comments of like X should do a video without using his voice changers. Like, no, this is what you sound like. Is that a thing people think, or is that?
Think that?
I'm not sure if it's a joke. I didn't know if it was something that like you said in a video somewhere.
I think people made a joke that like they think we're the same person.
I guess. But
anyway,
yeah. So that's what we want the podcast to get better. Is what we're saying. Like X coming from a background.
It's already the only Star Wars podcast, so I don't know why we're doing it, but we might as well. Be better. Yeah. On another note, we just had, before we get into the book, we had some pretty big Star Wars stuff this week. We had a new sort of short CG animation for Star Wars Squadrons, and we had a teaser for season 2 of The Mandalorian, and we were kind of thinking about doing a season 2, like a full podcast episode, but I guess it's fine just to discuss it here, right?
Yeah, like there wasn't a huge amount that was seen in the trailer, so maybe if you want to just give quick thoughts on that, and then once the season actually starts, we'll definitely have at least one full episode on it.
I mean, we could do like I'd be fine with doing 3 or 4 episodes, like maybe every couple
other
episodes,
episode, maybe. Yeah.
That way we still kind of keep to the original book schedule, but for something different as well. My thoughts on the trailer, it was really there wasn't much in there. My favorite thing was definitely the that shot that looked like it might have been Mon Cala, or it was at least a dock somewhere, and there's like a bunch of Quarren, and they're just dressed like human fishermen, and I really got a kick out of that. Like there's one in like a beanie, and it was one of the greatest things I've seen in a minute.
It's basically shit. Did I really forget the name of the guy from Pirates of the Caribbean?
Jack Sparrow?
No, the squid face one.
Oh, Davy Jones?
It's Davy Jones, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a bunch of Davy Joneses now because they're all dressed like him.
Yeah. No, I like it. It's cool. But do you think that's Mon Cala, or is it just any water world?
I think I really hope it's Mon Cala, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's just like, oh, this is other world that's nearby and there's a bunch of Quarren on it. It's like, okay, well, I'd feel slightly let down by that. Just let us actually go to Mon Cala, because we don't really, for as important as it is, even within like the scope of the movies, because the Mon Calamari gave the rebels all the ships in episode 6. We've never really had a major portrayal of it.
Like, that's Clone Wars, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I
You mean
like
in like
even
an
that's
actual
still
movie?
well, yeah.
Yeah.
There's never been any sort of direct visitation of it like that.
So
So
one thing that I saw pointed out by somebody was that before the Mandalorian was, when he gives Baby Yoda up and he's about to go do another mission, and he gets like the mission to track down a Mon Calamari. I don't remember his name, and he says basically something about the water world of, I can't remember the name, but people are speculating maybe that
hmm.
is where
Yeah,
maybe that's
because
where he's
it
going, which
was
would
all
make sense.
Quarren, so
Yeah. Well, there were a couple Mon Cala as well, Mon
yeah,
Calamari
but
as well, but.
that would be like the main thing that kind of
Hmm.
would imply to me that it might not be, but
Hmm.
it's yeah, I'm gonna be sad either way.
I wouldn't mind if maybe the Mon Cala and the Quarren have come together after the Galactic Civil War to like try to colonize some other planets or something.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I think that's already established that that's a thing that they've both done
hmm.
in both Legends and canon. So
Yeah,
they just,
for
I guess,
sure.
happen to go to a bunch of other wet and
Do you
wild
have
worlds.
general thoughts on the trailer though, besides for that one specific thing?
I mean, it was good.
Yeah.
I try not to like I'm bad at my job because I don't put too much stock into trailers, and
Hmm.
I generally try to avoid them for the most part.
Hmm.
But that ends up meaning I don't have enough spicy takes to support myself and my family.
Yeah.
Uh,
The only thing I'll say is, and this is kind of what I did my breakdown around, is something Glitz said in the comments. I know we don't usually read comments for the podcast itself, but he said, I doubt we're going to get an episode set of Mon Cala too expensive. That's kind of the great thing with The Mandalorian. They've got the new volume. They can kind of
yeah.
just create a set anywhere. Um, so the main thing I'm hoping to see with this season is like the way they use the volume expand, because there are some crazy, like they do interiors and exteriors. And I watched a really cool video from ILM the other day about how they can actually like in real time add a mountain or a giant ridge behind, this,
Yeah.
like, because it's like basically like a really impressive video game, and it gives off lighting. It seems to be a bit nicer for the actors to work in. So Mon Cala, you could do Mon Cala, you could do Coruscant, you could do Mustafar, really anywhere. But what I want to see is kind of them take it to the next level. Like if you watch season one, it seems like they kind of limit themselves, like in the type of shots they do, for example, based on like how the volume works.
Hmm.
So hopefully that's something they can continue to improve on. Otherwise, I just want more of season one. To be honest, it was.
Yeah. Like my
It,
biggest fear with it is kind of that they're going to go too much into the direction of like
mm,
major cameos from other characters.
yes.
But there wasn't like they wouldn't give any of that away in a trailer
Hmm.
unless they were really desperate for publicity, which they're not.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Um, the other thing, obviously, was the Star Wars Squadron CG short. We didn't do a live stream of that, so do you want to? You didn't do a video either, so do you want to give your brief thoughts?
I did a video, but I didn't post it because I decided after the fact that my thoughts were pointless
Oh,
at the time. But
Patreon video.
uh,
Sorry.
yeah, that was also cool. Like I think the big question that kind of brought up was whether there's going to be, as far as the actual game goes, whether there'd be any missions that are set in
Hmm.
atmosphere,
Hmm.
because you have the chase down the canyons, and like because the budget of the game or like the price of the game
Hmm.
kind of implies what the budget was. I feel like they're not going to have that, but
Yeah.
I think that would be cool.
There is one level that we got to play when we tried the game where it's set over Yavin Prime, so like the gas giant. And although you can't go down to the planet's surface, because I mean it's a gas giant, you'd be destroyed. The level is sort of more open, so one way you can get through or hide is to drop down into atmosphere for a few minutes, and it kind of it does do damage to your ship. Nobody realized that when we played, so I never tried it out, but
Hmm.
so maybe there'll be something like that. You're right. I doubt it'll be anywhere like that, but yeah, cool trailer. The final thing that I'll mention before we begin is I just got a very blessed tweet from Jamie Clarky Cat, who said, "You aren't a real Star Wars fan unless you acknowledge the Akbar that Akbar and Winter smashed." I'll say it again for people in the back. You aren't a real Star Wars fan unless you acknowledge that Akbar and Winter smashed. So
It's true.
maybe we'll get a bit of that in the Callisto trilogy. Um, I don't know if Winter's in it. Akbar definitely is.
Well, if Akbar's in it, then Winter is at most just off screen having
And if Winter's in
just
it,
had
then
sex with
Akbar is
Akbar.
definitely in it, if you know what I mean.
If
But let's continue with the topic of today's podcast. Um, Bane 3.
don't worry, like just to clarify for everyone who's watching the video version of this, it may look like I'm being unprofessional in drinking, but I assure you there is alcohol in this drink, so
Oh yeah, hold
it's
on,
all
me
good.
too.
But yeah, we are reading Darth Bane, Dynasty of Evil. So I guess we kind of skipped the full plot rundown for the last few books, but this is basically it's the final book in the Darth Bane trilogy. Bane
Pretty
has
light on
trained up
plot.
Xana. There's kind of an arc for Bane, an arc for Xana, and then an arc for Sarah, who is the daughter of Caleb.
Yeah.
But Bane is kind of worried that his protege Xana is too scared to challenge him, so Bane is starting to
classic
look
miscommunication.
yeah, like if they just this is a big problem with the Sith is that they don't talk enough. So Bane is like, well, if Xana doesn't kill me, then I need to live longer so I can find someone else to kill me. And Xana's thinking
10 years.
Yeah, this is 10 years after
He's getting
Rule of
old.
2. He is getting crispy from the dark side. I think he's like 45.
Yeah.
But him using super powered force lightning on himself to get the well, he was trying to kill the rest of the Jedi, but he in effect got the armor off of himself.
Classic gamer move.
Yep. So he's looking for a new apprentice, but Xana's thinking like, oh, the rules weren't clearly communicated to me, so I thought I needed to have an apprentice lined up before I challenged you. And this never really gets figured out between the two of them.
Yeah, they don't really talk. Like he thinks that because he thinks that he's got like 5 to 10 years left, maybe, of like being a Sith Lord, because like he's failing, like he's frail, he's dying. It's not epic.
If you've ever played KOTOR, he's looking like he's like maxed out evil or like Mass Effect Renegade.
Yeah. So and he doesn't have his Orbalisk armor anymore, which maybe that would have been a solution. But anyway, so his idea, he thinks that she's just trying to wait until he naturally dies, whereas Xana is kind of two minds at the beginning. At least she thinks on one hand maybe he's like trying to lure her into a false sense of security. And then she also thinks, well, maybe she shouldn't attack him when he's at his weakest. But of course, that obviously changes towards the end of the book. Yeah. So a lot of this, like the whole book, is really about the like it says, it's about his dynasty and his legacy. So it's like both, I guess, really both characters kind of want the same thing. They want the rule of 2 to be followed in absolute, which means that the most powerful have to survive.
Yeah, so Xana goes looking for her own apprentice. She comes up with this kind of millionaire playboy, former Jedi Set Hearth, who's living his party lifestyle. He's not really super into the idea, but then she kind of beats him into going along with it for a bit. But part of Sarah's storyline is that she's hired a bounty, or not a bounty hunter, really. A huntress who rejects the title of bounty hunter and thinks bounty hunters are lame. So she's like a force sensitive who had been initially hired by her bodyguard, Lucia, who had worked for Bane and the Gloomwalkers in book 1 to hunt down Bane for killing her master. And then this turns out to be Darth Cognis, swears herself to Bane, and ends up after the final battle between Bane and Xana, just saying, I'll work for whichever of you is alive after this. They're all very respectful of the process. They never clear up whether you have to find your own apprentice before killing your master. I feel like that's a point of order that really would have been worth clearing up, because it almost ruined the whole system.
And I mean, this is a book that kind of is a really small universe, sort of, because we've got Lucia, Bane's former one of the soldiers serving under him in the Gloomwalkers. She ends up meeting with Sarah, who is the daughter of Caleb, or Caleb. The audiobook calls it Caleb, so
audiobook's wrong. So
okay, fair enough. I would love if the Star Wars family was just named Caleb and Sarah. but although that's not her given name at birth. They team up, and then so that already is quite an interesting connection between like two people that Darth Bane at least has touched their lives very very closely. And Sarah obviously still kind of fears Darth Bane, especially when she realizes that because in book one, Bane goes to her father who heals him. And then later he sends her away because he doesn't want Bane to hold her over his head again. And so she's been kind of scared of him ever since. But then we find out that the father's been killed. She assumes that it was Bane who did so. We see the events of that in book two. So a lot of her story is kind of trying to capture and kill him. And of course, she ends up contacting not a bounty hunter. I guess she's an assassin. The assassin who will eventually become Bane and Bane's apprentice. So it's quite a small universe here.
A paid assassin who goes after targets. Not a bounty hunter. Absolutely not a bounty hunter.
Yeah, and she's very
she
offended.
takes private contracts. She doesn't hunt for bounties.
Mm-hmm.
She has to be specifically hired. That's it.
Mm-hmm. And of course, thrown in with this, we've got Bane once again. In every book so far, is this his fourth holocron he's found, or his third?
There was Revan's,
Revan, Darzu,
and yeah. There's at least those three.
Yeah.
No, so I think there might have been another one in the first book.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to. I thought there was another one.
I feel like there was another one when he was dealing with Revan's.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because he was obsessed last time with making his own holocron, and he's kind of got that nailed now.
Yeah.
His arm, he can't really use one of them. Very jittery. And this becomes important. Very important. I don't know if we want to just...
Or not, actually, but let's save it. Let's save it for the end.
Well, I think the thing we need to do first is clearly we need to rank, each of us needs to rank Bane, Xana, and Cognis. So...
Rank how?
Like, who's just better?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, so spoiler alert, Xana either does or doesn't defeat Bane in battle.
Does.
Canonically, she does. So, I mean, in power, I think Bane at his prime probably wins.
With the armor? He just fucking annihilates Xana.
Yeah.
Xana tried to attack him when he didn't have a lightsaber, but she was also not using her Sith sorceryness, which she's
that's the thing. It's like Bane's clearly the most powerful one-on-one fighter. So Bane can kill Cognis. Maybe Cognis can kill Xana, and Xana can kill Bane. Like they each have different skills. Like Xana's got this very rare gift that we see a bit in book 2, where she can kind of I don't know what the specific force power name is, even though I did a video on it. Basically, she mind fucks people.
So Bane's the fire type, Xana's the water type, and Cognis is the psychic type.
Xana would be psychic, and that's
Xana
super effective against Bane, who's a fighting type. Okay. And then I don't know enough about Pokemon to find the third one that works out there.
Yeah, trying to make a new holy trinity of types it's a whole different podcast. But I mean, I think Cognis is clearly the second best of all of them in all dimensions. Bane is the worst. He's just always getting captured. I've never seen anyone get captured
that's true.
while trying to avoid getting captured as much as Bane does.
You're not wrong.
He just always happens. And Xana, I think Xana's the best of the three.
Okay.
Cognis is too like single-minded. I'm just gonna hunt things. Like, But Xana seems to get like the fighty bits, the blending in with society bits. She's of the three, I think she's the best suited for what the Sith are trying to do right now, which is like blend in, manipulate things. And
but you gotta consider that Bane created the entire rule of two that all that's based off of, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't very good at it.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, he does get a sweet office in this book, which I really appreciated as somebody with a less cool office.
Well, mine's better than either. So
you think you You don't think Bane's got a better gamer chair than you?
Well,
His
maybe
little
his
stock
gamer
room?
chair is better, but the rest of the office is nicer.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, because he's kind of got his library and his office in two different places. You've got it all there.
Yeah, well, he probably has more overall square footage, but I've made
Hmm.
better use of the space.
Hmm. Yeah, okay, fair
So,
enough.
and he probably pays a lot more in rent, which,
I think he owns. I think he probably owns.
well, he's still got to pay like property taxes and stuff. And on Kudrick for a mansion, like even at this time, I feel like that's going to be a pretty penny, especially when you've got a valet service at the spaceport, basically.
Hmm.
And yeah,
So Bane ends up, of course, recovering Endedu, or as the audiobook, every Star Wars audiobook calls him Undedu, which is just a little bit too on the nose for me.
it's actually a dead dude, and it just gets mistranslated. uh, which is why it's pretty ironic. Like Bane's always looking for these holocrons of the Sith Lords, and then uh, I forget where he was exactly.
Hmm.
On Ambria, I think. Yeah. So he noticed a freshly dug grave a few meters off to one side, but he didn't give it a second glance. The dead
Hmm.
were of no consequence to him. That is your entire life, is chasing
Yeah,
dead
true.
Sith Lords.
Yeah, that's so true.
I don't care about these dead people. I only care about the other dead people.
Yeah, I mean, Bane's just like, he's just so dumb. Like, he's the dumbest smart guy ever. But like, I do really kind of enjoy the beginning of this book, where I kind of said to you, it's almost like Plagueis Light,
Mhm.
because it's like it's showing how the Sith kind of have their tentacles in like the ordinary affairs
Yeah,
of
don't
beings.
say it like that.
I'm gonna say it
Was
like
there a
that.
Quarren Sith? Do we know of
There
any? Was
must
there
be
one in Crates Sith?
foreign Sith. Yes, Darth Malival.
Was that in the one Sith?
Yeah,
I'm kind of sad that I know that, but also
there was
kind of sad that I
also
didn't.
Darth Azard.
Darth Isard?
I mean, we'll go with that. Speaking of Isard, isn't Sutric mentioned
Yes, the
in? Yeah,
Q-Trick hegemony is what they're
yeah,
in
yeah.
for Isard's Revenge.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Nice little connection.
Which is
there.
actually pretty far out in not the unknown regions, in the Outer Rim.
Mm-hmm.
So, or it doesn't count as mid rim. Either way, it's kind
They
of far
technically
out
call it the
for
Outer Rim.
such a pretty populated and important planet for the time, like being that
Well,
far
they
out.
do. I think they do a good job explaining it, where it's like, yeah, it's out in the Outer Rim, but it's a nexus of trade routes or
Yeah,
whatever. Like,
because like you have like all the Sith space, which is kind of up there near it.
Mhm.
But it's a good place for some
Yeah,
Sith Lords to go and set up
yeah,
a
great place.
very inconspicuous giant mansion where everyone knows them, thinks they're brother and sister, but had Sarah or anyone who'd ever come across either of them ever noticed them. It was like, hey, those are the guys with the lightsabers. The one flaw in their plan was that they knew there were people that recognized them, who then started talking to the Jedi. It's like, it doesn't sound like
Well,
Darth Bane.
there's also the fact that in all the artwork we see of Bane and Xana, they always have those eye markings.
Hmm.
They're never mentioned in any of the books, but I just imagine them like Darth Bane's like, now without my obelisk armor, I can interact freely among society. He's like dropping his kid off at school with just like full eye triangles going.
Xana, I command you to get these sick tats.
I really don't like those though, so I'm just gonna guess that they're I'm just gonna in my head picture them without that. You think they're always talking about like, okay, Darth Bane's main things are that he's tall, he's large, and he's got a bald head, but like not the eye tats.
Tall, large, angry, and bald.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Which,
who plays these people in a movie then?
It's got to be Vin Diesel.
I
Even
I
though
can
he's
see
not
Vin
tall.
Diesel for well.
Just because it would be hilarious.
What if like can The Rock be angry enough to be Bane? Or the
let's do
guy
comment.
you've seen Breaking Bad, right?
Yeah,
Hank.
Hank, like the police officer.
Yeah, a little too short, but I feel like some forced perspective. Tom Hardy Bane. I guess
Yeah,
I
I'm
could see
thinking
that.
of, you know who I think of when I think of tall, bald, and jacked?
Who?
Mr. Clean.
He's not real, right? So, okay, let's just go with it. We got Mr. Clean playing Bane. Let's get Janelle from Big Brother to play Xana. And
I actually really like that for like Xana in this book when she's like 30.
yeah, 35 I think she is, and Janelle is like just under 40 or just pushing 40. So I feel like that would work. Maybe get like Brittany Haynes to play her in Rule of Two or something. And then Cognis, I mean, doesn't really matter. Cognis is not human, so
Actually, MGF Customs in the chat said Mark Strong is Bane. That's a pretty good call.
Itachi. Mark Strong. I don't know who that is.
He was in like what was he in recently?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I think he was in Kingsman.
Lord Henry Blackwood. I don't know. He looks a bit too narrow. He's not broad enough to be Bane.
Yeah. Well, there's some time. It's gonna be a Star Wars movie. They can pay him to work out for a few months.
I don't know if you can make his face broader though.
Well, George made Carrie Fisher's face skinnier. At least he tried to. So
I could see him as like maybe Plagueis or something.
That's actually not a bad call. How come no one said Stone Cold Steve Austin yet?
So if we go with Steve Austin, we've got a wrestler, we've got a Big Brother player, an actual actor. Let's get Ian McDiarmid could play Palpatine, I think. Not anymore. If we're talking like Darth Sidious era.
What about Bautista?
Dave Bautista?
Yeah.
I don't know if he can look mean enough.
In what? Like
can
Dave
he look
Bautista,
mean enough?
like
yeah,
he's huge.
He's huge, but does he look mean enough? Can he look mean enough?
I think so.
All right.
Did you see him in?
We're risking this whole production on your confidence that Dave Bautista can look.
Did you see him in the what's it called? What movie was he in recently? Oh, Blade Runner. Did you see him in Blade Runner?
No.
He looked pretty mean. Like he was angry. He was a replicant. Okay. He didn't want to be caught. Yeah.
That's fine.
I think Dave Bautista would be my choice. And he's actually a good actor too. If you watch that movie, at least he could do it. I believe it.
Yeah.
Let me know what you guys think. Send us emails. Let me know what you think.
So, how often do you think it happens that both Sith Lords end up fighting at the height of their abilities?
Just thinking about this.
Where the apprentice has just become the stronger one, learned everything they can, even though the book very clearly talks about how like they both had different strengths. Maybe Xana's overall power level had passed Bane's, but they had very clear.
I don't know. Maybe they could work
abilities.
Together. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe some sort of cooperation would have been nice. Because Cognis is being tagged in, but Cognis doesn't have Bane's abilities either. They're all kind of bringing something new to the table, but like
I'm not convinced.
You need the whole line to not be chicken shit and just wait until they're slightly weaker, and then what if Bane wins? What if Xana's dead? Like all that time's out the window. Bane can't even with maybe he figures out essence transfer fast enough and lasts long enough and then train someone else, but it's like
I'm not convinced that any of them have more like pure potential than Bane or Xana had is the thing. Like I'm not convinced that because Bane is like they almost think he's like the Sithari. So like I'm not convinced that just because he teaches somebody and everyone's learning something after him that it's going to produce a naturally stronger line of Sith. You know what I mean?
Like let's look at who we got. in the end of the line. We got Tenebris, Plagueis, Sidious, and Vader.
Palpatine, ultimately. Oh, yeah, sorry, Sidious, yeah.
That's Sidious.
Yeah.
Come on, get it together, Rack.
And none of them, like, Palpatine wasn't strong because of the rule of two. He was strong just because he was, like, you know, like, it's like when a hockey player, they call them, like, a generational talent. Like, your Sidney Crosby or, like, your Nathan McKinnon or whatever. It's just, like, he's just a generational talent. He wasn't good, like, it's, you know what I mean?
Like, I might be willing to call, let's say, the trio of Vader, Sidious, and Plagueis better than the trio of Cognis, Bane, and Xana. But
I agree.
I'm also kind of saying, like, Vader's kind of pulling that down. Vader, after he loses all of his limbs, is less epic. Still kind of epic, but I don't know that Vader's bringing anything to the table that's, especially as the Sithari. But I guess
Vader's kind of like
Sidious
a gimped Bane.
Yeah, like, if you have, let's say, Vader up against Bane, maybe they're matching off against each other. Xana against Sidious?
I don't think anyone can beat Sidious, personally. I think Sidious is unbeatable.
Well, he's got the essence transfer thing down to a science. Yeah. Well, sort of, because a lot of his bodies just wrinkle up and die. But
not epic.
Yeah, he just kind of throws him away after a while. But I don't know. If we're just talking like a straight out brawl, I don't know that I think Plagueis and Sidious are probably the two best Sith for what they're supposed to be doing in this period, right?
Agreed. Yes, definitely.
Vader is, I guess, fine once you're out of the period of like secrecy, and like Anakin Skywalker.
Don't even see Vader as like a Sith to me. Yeah. I don't know. Vader like never felt like a Sith. He just felt more like a Darth Maul type of character, because he maybe in the new comics, which I haven't read all of, there's more of this, but like you don't see him. I just see him more as like a warrior. Like he's more like a high ranking officer of the Imperial military.
That's almost more Sidious's fault than Vader's, though. Like, how much of the Sith teachings is Palpatine actually imparting onto Vader? Totally. How much of the Sith knowledge does Vader actually have? Totally. And like, if Luke never comes along, because like Vader was probably willing to go against Sidious with Luke, make Luke his apprentice. But if Luke never comes along, I guess he tries to do a Star Killer if we're looking at Force Unleashed, but I don't know. It just seems like
he's held down by his asthma too much, man.
Yeah, he needs that inhaler. Like, so do I. I did as a kid.
I think you're right. But part of that's because like Palpatine just wasn't interested in the Rule of Two anymore, because he didn't intend to be surpassed. Where like all the other Sith knew, I guess, other than Plagueis really, and most of the other Sith kind of accepted that they would be surpassed for the greater good. But like Palpatine intended to live forever. He didn't teach Vader. Like he's all about replacing his students to get, somebody more powerful. But
yeah. Do you think if because Bane does figure out essence transfer in the book, do you think if Bane had figured that out a bit sooner, he would have instead planned on himself being the Sith Eternal?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he ever thought he was the ultimate that the Sith could offer. But here's an idea, though. Everyone's always like, let's go in clones or shit. Gamorreans. Seriously.
The Order of the Gamorrean Lords?
Why not? Okay, he says he wants a good body. Like he's like, I gotta have abs. New bodies, gotta have abs. That's like why the last 2 weeks of Sith training for Xana, he was like, get on those crunches. No, but he's like, the body's got to be strong, and it's got to be something weak-willed.
Yeah.
Gamorrean. Maybe it's like a Gamorrean brain isn't sophisticated enough or something, but like, I don't know, just like have one of your buddies huff glue for like half an hour and get him while he's fucked up.
But... The ancient Sith ritual of fucking Gamorreans huffing glue.
Yes, get that pig in the glue bag.
The final step each Sith apprentice has to take before getting their Darth title is just get a bunch of Gamorreans in a circle, get the glue, the ritual huffing.
Yeah. Close all the windows. Close all the windows. But I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've got to be able to find some, like, or just find a really dumb, like, bodybuilder, because, like, I don't know why. I don't know. It's like people are always so slow to essence transfer. Like Sidious is like, gotta wait till Anakin. I guess in his case. So in Dark Empire, we see that Sidious is like, he's if the body is not forceful or willful enough on its own, then the dark side effects will destroy it anyway. So maybe that's also what he was worried about. I don't know.
Mm.
Or
Like, you
someone
may
said
as well just
Basil
get
Warv,
some.
yeah. Like the Ramones. Remember those guys? He like kills like 30 people in Fate of the Jedi.
Yeah.
He's just like got all his limbs chopped off and just like biting people's heels and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I still think that that's not quite as good as the Gamorreans. What about like Dexter's species?
Yeah. I mean, but they're not stupid though. Like that's the thing. Gamorreans are pigs. Like, like we know they're weak-willed. So like,
Except for Piggy.
yeah, because Piggy's a smart one.
But you've also you're probably looking for someone with a bit more dexterity. Because like, yeah, they've got their strength stat maxed and they got their intelligence and whatever stat mind and like super mind. But can you see Xana? Like maybe Bane is thinking, yes, I'm going to get in the Gamorrean body. This is what I want.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
can you see Palpatine thinking like, oh, I'm going to continue my political prowess as a Gamorrean? Or Xana
No,
doing
right.
like, I don't think.
That's their strength. Listen, okay, here's the thing. If you're gonna live forever, you might as well spend one life being like a Chadra fan, just like read Sith holocron or like study Sith holocrons for 50 years. Like you're not in a rush, really. Like, just
No,
be like
but
some Chadra fan merchant.
but if we're
like,
talking about like a standard Sith body, that
listen, Gamorreans are what ideal performance looks like, and if you can't handle that, or peak performance, if you
look,
can't handle
I think
that,
you're just projecting now. Like, I don't know.
well, we'll
Is
see when
this
season 2 of The Mandalorian comes, I guess.
you think that's going to cover like?
Yes, there's Gamorrean fighting in the trailer.
Oh, I thought you meant like Mando and Baby Yoda are going to sit there talking about whether Bane should have essence transferred into a Gamorrean, and that this would finally be, we'd finally have this all figured out.
I mean, if anyone would know it, probably Baby Yoda.
That's true. You mean Clone Yoda? We didn't talk about that on the we didn't talk about that on the podcast, did we? That was on Beerio Kart.
Yeah, that was on Beerio Kart.
So we have a bet that I think Baby Yoda is a clone of Yoda or Yaddle. We did give me the allowance that it could be Yaddle.
Yes.
And Justin here thinks that it's not. It's just a little Yoda. That isn't Yoda. Right?
Yeah, I think we kind of finessed it a bit more on the when we were like 6 beers deep in each, but something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't turn out to be a clone, I'm eating a burger, right? And
yes,
if
we don't
it
know.
does, we don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But yeah, so that's not important. But part of the whole essence transfer thing culminates with Bane. He spends the entire book trying to figure out essence transfer from Darth the Dead Dude. Invades his temple, murders a bunch of Sith cultists who are on Prakith, worshipping in a dead dude, and his final battle with Xana, when Xana's using some mind altering techniques on Bane.
She's basically like slapping him down with like dark side sludge.
Yeah. So Bane's like, I'm out of here, and essence transfers into Xana. So
Hippity hoppity, your body is now my property.
That is actually
pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's the incantation that he got from Darth the Dead Dude's
Can you imagine?
holocron. He just fucking hacks his way into the holocron too. We can talk about that in a second. Yeah. But he jumps into Xana's body. They have like a battle of the wills. Xana comes out on top, but Cognis, I think you get the scene from Cognis's perspective where Xana's arm is kind of...
Well, we don't know. The book doesn't explicitly say that Xana comes out on top, though.
Drew Karpyshyn did.
Drew Carpenter said afterward. But
Well, Xana's body is now inhabited by what is presumably Xana, but because she is doing this shit with her arm, which is like reflective of what Bane has been doing all book, there's the idea that either Bane actually won and is just pretending to be Xana, which led to a theory that like everyone is now Darth Bane, just passing his body from one person to the next. Which no, whatever you think happened between Bane and Xana, no.
Well, okay, there's a canon explanation. Everyone knows that, yes, canon says that Bane was not successful in essence transfer, but I also think it's worth looking at it without all the other things, whatever Drew Karpyshyn said after the fact, whatever other canon stories, and just look at what the book is implying. And I think the book at least leaves it open, because there's two things. There's, as you said, throughout this whole book, Bane's suffering with like tremors in one of his hands, and one thing he does is he flexes his hand and kind of puts his nails into his palm, and Xana does that after the attempted essence transfer. And another thing is there's something about like Xana's described as looking like she was like getting used to her body or something. I forget the exact quote. Do you know the quote I'm referring to?
At the end?
Yeah. There's something like, hold on, let me just see if I can find it real quick. It's just something about how like she was getting used to her body, and then she shook her head or something and seemed comfortable. So definitely the canon, for what that's worth, is definitely solid, but I think the book is at least leaves the possibility open.
I think it's more implying, like, just the text alone to me was more implying that there is some element of Bane that survived and like imprinted itself on Xana, but that it is Xana.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because, like, even let's say it was Bane, why would he have a reason to hide that from Cognis? Because he'd just say, like, oh, Xana turned out to be weak, and I'm still in charge. I'm epic.
I don't know. I think there are maybe Bane doesn't want to know doesn't want his new apprentice to know that essentially he can bypass the rule of two now. And like maybe he's gotten to the point, because for me one of the main issues was that, I guess for me, Bane's, the way he kind of portrays power and getting what you want as being the ultimate doesn't line up exactly with his idea of the rule of two. So Bane's all about protecting himself, getting power so he can take what he wants, but then he's building his whole life towards essentially giving the mantle to somebody else so they can continue it and eventually defeat the Jedi in 1,000 years. So to me, maybe he's realized that now he's got this one avenue where he can, one, further the Sith at least somewhat, but also kind of or at least kind of keep up that facade, but also remain in power, sort of in hiding. I think he would find that attractive.
Maybe. I don't know. I just...
Oh, here's the quote, by the way. She moved awkwardly and couldn't seem to stand up straight, as if she was unfamiliar with how her own limbs and muscles worked.
Yeah, I feel like that's just some sort of imprint.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. It's interesting. It was probably one of my favorite parts of the book, even though I think Essence Transfer generally is kind of lame.
I like that he tried it. I don't really love that kind of thing being like set up as like in the way it's handled here as that kind of open-ended thing, because especially when the author just comes out later and says no, that's actually not what happened, and when it does kind of go against what Bane was doing, and I don't know, it felt kind of like a cheap way to handle it almost. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially where like it's kind of handled like we don't see the actual struggle. Again, we know, Chris, that we know what the author has said, but I'm just talking about taking the book on its own. But you're right, it would have been maybe more interesting, because it's kind of shitty to have the total death of a character that we've seen kind of change through 3 books, and 20 plus years kind of happen essentially off screen, and we only find out kind of indirectly that he's dead.
Yeah. And yeah, their fight is really just the biggest indicator that like they would operate so much better if they were both alive and didn't feel this compulsion to kill each other. Like, yeah, if there's too many of you, they'll team up against each other and overthrow the leader. Wham! But like, you're cutting yourself off from so much knowledge and so much ability to actually specialize in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And like, there's so many times in this series alone where they're just like, oh, the Jedi actually already know this? Let's go get their information. It's like, yeah, they can do this because they have like 80 people just sitting in the temple reading about shit, and you'll never be able to match that. Like, no matter how much you think you're concentrating the power or passing along from one person to the next, like, Bane was never going to be able to communicate to Xana how to do the Sith sorcery stuff. Xana's never going to be able to communicate to Cognis how to be quite the same level of, like, lightsaber badassery. And like, yeah, they can go find other holocrons, except they can't because Bane destroys everyone he fucking touches. So they're just running out of all this stuff that Bane is saying is important, and they're all they can do is look back to the knowledge that was gathered by other people. There's very little that Bane actually does to introduce new stuff or to combine new knowledge or to pass on. Like, almost nothing that we learn that we see him learn gets passed on to Xana.
Yeah, like we don't even know that she knows how to make a holocron. I would have kind of liked if they had talked a bit more about like what Darth Bane. Last book actually did feel a bit rushed to me. I wouldn't have mind if they spent some time talking about like what was on Bane's holocron, because like he has spent all of this time kind of collecting research and stuff from the Sith Temple back on Korriban. That's probably all burned down now. Would have been kind of interesting to hear like what's he passing on, because there's always this general like vague idea that he's making this legacy, but like other than the fact that he thinks he's making a powerful student, we don't know like how is he actually making the Sith be stronger. And I think even more importantly, one of the main sort of sticking points for me is I still don't find it believable that Bane would want the Sith to be successful more than he would want to be alive himself. Like, he doesn't say why does he want the Sith to rule? Like, what is he going to do with the galaxy? That's why I like Plagueis, because although, Sidious and Plagueis are definitely bad guys, and Tenebrous as well, you still at least get the idea, okay, they do think that the galaxy under some sort of like divine rule and powerful Sith will be better than a galaxy under Jedi, and that the only thing we get with Bane is, oh, the strong should take what they get and drop the weak. Like Bane just gives us like his kind of incel rhetoric. I wish we'd gotten more about like the more Plagueis kind of aspect of it.
Yeah, because you can see elements of what Plagueis' goals are as well as how it's self-serving. Whereas in Bane, you can kind of see the self-serving aspects, but it's also stated as if like his death is going to serve this greater purpose of the dark side, but also not why Bane would want to serve the greater purpose of the dark side.
Yeah, exactly.
And that has to be very central to what he's doing, unless it's just like this is the best way for him to become powerful, because there is like the core part of it is that it's going like he wants to serve the dark side because his chain, like through victory my chains are broken. So their core tenet is something self-serving there, but I don't know.
But like there has to be an ultimate goal and an ultimate purpose and philosophy other than just be strong and oppose Jedi.
Yeah,
because you can do those things without having like you could just be in perpetual war with the Jedi. And like I don't think destroy Jedi is enough
for Bane's personal thing. Like the Bane's relationship with the Jedi is next to non-existent. Like he fought in the war with the Sith, but like there wasn't any real personal stake in it for him other than this is what the Sith wanted, or is it better for the actual dark side that the Jedi go away, and how does that benefit him? Whereas like we know he has this reason to hate the Sith
and the Jedi.
Yeah, like we know how he feels about the Brotherhood of the Dark Side. We know how he feels about maybe the Republic in general, or like their ignoring of like Outer Rim worlds, maybe, if you want to factor it in that way, and that's why his early life was shit. But it's like very focused on the Jedi, and destroying the Jedi, but we never get him like laying out why this is important to him.
Yeah, and that's why I like I kind of like his former Gloomwalker, because it does explain like what's her name again? The one who's in the
Lucia?
Gloomwalkers with her. Yeah. Lucia, she has like with her it kind of gives a nice overview of like what's going on, why she feels what way she does. And I like that scene too where she goes to Coruscant and she's talking to the Ithorian and he's like just completely oblivious. He's insulting like the Sith troopers and like she was one of them. Like I enjoyed that, but like we could have used more of that with Bane, I think.
Yeah. There actually are a few places in the book where almost entirely from Lucia, and I think maybe once from Senna, talking about like what the problem with the Jedi Order is and kind of foreshadowing their own fall. But none of that gets connected to what Bane's problem with them would be, or why Bane would latch on to this thing that is, or like build up this 1,000-year plan that is entirely anti-Jedi when we don't know what his personal motivation for that is. When him being a Sith Lord is supposed to like personal motivation has to factor into it somewhere there, or else it just doesn't work with what the philosophy there is. But
yeah, the final thing I wanted to say is on the kind of point of Sith is that at first we get like at first it's all about besting your master in fair battle, but then Xana at the end she wants to kill Bane at that station when he's been drugged up and she knows that he's vulnerable and he doesn't have his lightsaber, and I just thought that was kind of weird. Like I thought she would try to, because at that point it's just about killing him so he doesn't kill you, and it's supposed to be about generally not self-preservation but survival of the fittest. I thought that was a bit odd.
Yeah, but there's also an acknowledgement within it that like survival of the fittest means different things. Like, yes, they have their different strengths, and then like Bane doesn't want to fight Xana on like a purely Sith sorcery side, and Xana doesn't want to fight Bane on a purely like brute force side.
Yeah.
And then maybe it is to Xana's credit and strength that she would find these situations where Bane is weakened and go after him in that way. But there's also the implication several times that if actually she handles it just slightly the wrong way without challenging him at his best, then she's actually failing. But does that mean if she's challenging him at his best that she would then, to kind of fulfill both the spirit and the letter of the law, does she need to like walk up to him in his office and say, I challenge you to a duel, and then slap him, and then do they have to do it the brute force way so that she shows she's surpassed him in his best area, or else then she still would have something to learn from him, but he also has something to learn from her. And clearly Bane hasn't told her all this stuff that he found about Darth the Dead Dude's holocron and holocron making, or holocron brute forcing, which is what he did to get the information from Ndedu. Didn't tell her about essence transfer. Like the whole idea that you're surpassing your master, they have nothing more to give you, it just doesn't fit. Like it doesn't make sense as a philosophy, especially when you're limiting yourself to two people.
Yeah, like Plagueis just yeeted a roof down on Tenebris. Which, because he was like, I've got nothing more to teach you, and it wasn't really about who was the better Sith. It was just like, like there's nothing more I can teach you. I want to be powerful now. I kind of like how like I want to be the master now, so because I kind of liked that in that book.
Well, Tenebris kind of got the idea that like him and Plagueis would be buddies from then on, but then Plagueis got even more of that idea with Sidious. Like, oh well, we're gonna join Sith forever, and none of those transfers of power end up being anywhere near what Bane was envisioning or what he set the Order up to be.
No.
And the Sith kind of get really far from that kind of like brute force power under Tenebris, Plagueis, Sidious. I don't know how Bane would react to kind of seeing those Sith in action, and especially how they got power from each other.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how Palpatine killed Plagueis after a burial cart.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it is just kind of like, to be fair, like Palpatine, when Palpatine or Plagueis, when they killed their masters, they're not showing that they're better warriors. Perhaps they're showing that they're better at the part of the Sith that's operating from the shadows, kind of like you said. So I think that's fair.
And Xana could have done the exact same thing, kill him when he's fucking drugged one of the 16 times that it happens
Yeah.
and captured. It's
Yeah.
like, even if you need to justify within that, just say, like, you've proven you were weak because you got captured, which she even kind of hints at, and that's why she kind of feels okay going after him without his lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
But you could have just said that earlier. You could have done that. Like, and there is the thing about, like, oh, I don't have an apprentice yet, and I'm just going to make Sedharth. I'm really glad Sedharth didn't become a Sith apprentice. That I would take as, like, the biggest evidence that Xana was not ready to be in charge was that her choice of apprentice was absolutely shit.
Yeah, and I don't know, Xana, she just doesn't have like the same kind of like drive that you see with like Palpatine or Bane to me. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. Like that was one thing about like she doesn't have the drive of them, but she also doesn't have like the pure sadism of Cognis. So it's kind of
Yeah.
yeah. Kind
Xana's
of
a lot more specific purpose focused rather than kind of like the grand plan.
mm-hmm.
And I feel like Cognis would be the same way
Yeah.
based off what little
Yeah.
we know about her.
Agreed.
And then the next one after Cognis is Millennial, who Cognis starts training up before he leaves and becomes a prophet of the dark side. But it seems like the little information we learn about him kind of shows he would have been kind of better along the line of like the undercover Sith and more in line
Mm-hmm.
with Plagueis Sidious. But oh well.
Yeah. When was Millennial supposed to have died? Because doesn't he live for a really long time?
He he does, but he leaves the Sith before Cognis
Okay.
dies. I'm pretty sure. 'Cause I
So did
think
he have an apprentice?
no, he was only ever the apprentice. Then he left to become the prophet of the dark side.
So then who popped up?
I don't know if we ever learn Cognis's other apprentice after that, because I
Mm-hmm.
think the next ones we learn about are either Ramage or the Gravid line. So
Okay.
Gravid,
Hmm.
Kane, Jean. I think Jean is her name, and there was someone else in there, but and then after them, it's just down to Tempers's master, I think.
Mm-hmm. One thing that
Or
I thought was
no,
really
Vectivus is in there somewhere, but
I don't really count Vectivus. To me, Vectivus is kind of like a backup. Like he was like not fully apprenticed yet. I don't know.
hmm.
What was I gonna say? One thing I'd like to imagine, because like the final battle between Bane and Xana, they're described as like peak fighting condition. Bane's like an animal moving faster than the eye can follow. And I just imagine like a Kodor combat scene with like missing like blaster shots 5 feet away and like spinning your sword around like woof, and like sitting there to recover. And I was imagining a battle like that because so much of this book is kind of like RPG based, like we've been
Hmm.
talking about.
Well, what is the
Um,
casting time on Xana's Sith Visions?
and Bane uses like the death field ability, for
Yep.
Kodor, kind of. So yeah, I was just imagine like how unepic my battle against Malik is at the end of Kodor every time versus like this. Where it's
Yeah.
like me standing there running around taking med packs. Crazy that it skipped that one scene where Bane downs 30 stim packs before the battle.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cheating. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to get on Xana for waiting until he's weaker, don't
Hmm.
use the hyperalacrity stim, like the Mandalorian melee shield
Take off
and the
Brevik's
Arcanian.
yeah.
Like, come on. Just get your shit together.
Yeah.
But do you want to move on to our rankings? I think we kind of, unless there's anything else plot wise you wanted to cover
Well,
there.
we didn't really talk about the plot because there's the whole plot with Sarah and the others. All I'll say about that is I did kind of enjoy the sort of like evil begets evil.
Oh shit!
Um,
It is Sarah. I've been saying Senna the whole time. There's a reason for this.
is it the font on your reader?
No, it's there's there's a League of Legends champion named Lucian. His wife's name is Senna, so Lucia and Sarah just turned into Lucian and Senna to me.
Jesus
But
Christ.
that's my bad.
Um, what was I saying? Yeah, so their plot was kind of boring. Like it wasn't awful, but like between that and the Seth stuff, the middle of the book got a little bit busy. But I did like the evil begets evil stuff at
Yeah.
the end, like where had, and not just like on a small scale how it fucks up Sarah's life, but also how her like desire for revenge is basically um what sorry, just one second. It's basically what gives Darth Bane his apprentice.
Yeah. Yeah, like there other than kind of making that point, there isn't really much of a purpose that they serve for the story. Uh like yeah, you get that kind of background for everything happening against it, but and you kind of see that like the Sith soldiers aren't inherently evil. So,
Corey, can you give me a second? Something just came
yeah.
up.
Uh, all right, we'll just give him a couple minutes with that.